Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Justine Vierdag on the podcast. She's an IFBB Women's Physique Division competitor. She's also coming to us from South Chicago, a little bit southern of the Chicago border, I should say. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Justine, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Ryan, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, I asked this question to everyone to start off. So, what's the weather like in near the Chicago area today?
We're getting a little bit of snow. It's probably like 32 degrees, so it's a little cooler. We've had some really nice weather here for Chicago lately in the last couple of weeks, and around Christmas it was like 60 degrees. We took a bike ride, and so it was really nice. You're looking a little jealous right now, but so yeah, so it's really not been bad. I'm not a winter girl for sure. I love the sun and warm temperatures, so um, winter's not my thing, but I could deal.
Well, for everyone who isn't aware, being that she's in South Chicago and I'm in Bloomington, Minnesota, it's about a 6-hour drive between us. And yet, during Christmas for us, I think it was like 10 degrees.
Oh
So
gosh.
that's just showing you how bipolar this weather can be at times. But I mean, before I depress everyone with our winter woes, I mean, all the people in the southern part of the United States that are listening are probably just laughing their butt off right now. But why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what inspired and what motivated you to get in shape and sort of adapt this lifestyle?
Sure. So I had three daughters, and I was kind of younger when I had them. And after having three kids, I was still probably like 25, 26. And I was, you see pictures of yourself after having kids, and you're just kind of like, man, that's just not how I picture myself. That's not what I want to look like. And it honestly just really all started with me just trying to get back to you know, maybe like pre-baby weight at least, and just kind of get into shape. And I just felt like I looked way older than I was at that time, just seeing pictures of myself. So that's really what started it all. I just started kind of working out at home around my kids napping and just fitting it into a busy mom's life, and it just like clicked for me. I started reading a lot, and I always had a true passion for um, muscular physiques, whether it be men or women. Even as like an 8-year-old kid, I remember like watching the Hulk TV show and just thinking that was so awesome. And um, so it really just clicked for me as I was doing it. I started reading a lot. I started like looking at the magazines with the some of the fitness models and people who compete and stuff, and just started putting it together for myself and progressed from there. And I think about um, I'm trying to think how many years into actually like really consistently working out did I go to compete. So it was probably about 8 years when from the time that I started to when I competed.
That's all. What can I say? The most impressive part of your story is I'm 25 and I don't have any kids, and you already had three by then. That's incredible. I could not
Yeah.
imagine myself with three little kids running around at this age. That's just amazing. But yeah, you talked about watching that Incredible Hulk show. I have seen it on reruns every once in a while, and it's a little cheesy nowadays. But like I
Yeah.
can imagine back in the day, yeah, that was a huge deal, especially with it being Lou Ferrigno. But I mean, a question that I ask all the health and fitness guests that I have on is, if you were to walk into a gym with 100 people, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape, whether it comes down to their diet, their nutrition, how many reps they do, what exercises they did. I mean, so many little things add up to that overall package that people end up seeing. What was that experience like for you, sort of figuring out what works best for your body? Because if you were to walk up to someone and say, hey, what'd you train for that body part? It looks amazing. What works best for that person 99% of the time is not going to work as good for you.
Oh, exactly. That's so true. For me, I just really started out like, at home. I had like no equipment whatsoever, so I was kind of doing the cardio type of thing, but I was doing like a high intensity type of plyometrics workout. So that definitely worked for me as far as burning a lot of fat quickly. And then I slowly got into adding weight training, and that worked amazingly fast. Like the high intensity, um, the fat loss programs I was doing was great for cardio, just great for overall health and fitness. And but man, did I really start seeing like reshaping results when I started using weights. And it was very light weights. It didn't take a whole lot, especially in the beginning, to really see it. And honestly, my diet was still not great at that point. I put it together in small pieces. Um, but yeah, the weights I'd say really made a huge difference for me. And people would start, once I started with the weights, I would have family members and people saying, "Man, what are you doing? It's really working for you." So I was like, okay, I'm hooked now.
Well, yeah, and I always say everyone's just sort of like their own mad scientist trying to concoct their own potion, trying to figure out what works best for them. But you led me perfectly into, I mean, the number one myth and stereotype that I love to bust on this show. I mean, it's gotten better the last 5 years due to Instagram, but there are still, unfortunately, so many women that have that fear that if they walk into the gym and they pick up one weight, they're, going to put on 50 pounds of muscle. And I know that you didn't have that fear when you were getting started because you said you always had that thing for a muscular physique, but I bet you still hear that all the time. How do you like to respond to that whenever people come up to you with that fear?
Yeah, it takes you one, if you're going to start working with weights, it would take a really long time of really consistent progressive training for a woman to gain amounts of muscle that she would be worried about. And you would also have to be genetically predisposed to gain muscle fairly easily. You have to have, there's so many factors that go into that. It took me a year when I was seriously training and trying to gain some size for competing. It would take me, I could only put on about 5 pounds in a year, sometimes in a year and a half, depending on how far apart my.
And that's really good too, especially for a woman based on all the
Mm.
guests that I've had on 5 pounds is really, really good.
Yeah, yeah. So it is very hard. You have to really be in a program that is really dedicated to muscle hypertrophy to get something like that. The average woman trying to go in and use weights just for just kind of like reshaping and firming and getting a little bit of muscle definition, not anything crazy and bulky and big, but you can do a lot for your physique by adding a weight routine to your workout for sure.
100%. I mean, it's one of those myths that, I mean, it's been getting better, but unfortunately it still exists. But again, anyone out there, if you do automatically put on all that muscle, again, my number, you can always find me and give me a call. I'm been more than happy to talk to you then. But going off that, I mean, I always say one thing that I think impacts women so much more positively than it does men when it comes to working out is just that confidence boost that it gives you. I mean, on this podcast alone, we've heard stories from hundreds of women that, have been able to make life-changing decisions, or it's helped them be maybe a little more assertive. It just helped them better their own lives. And I always say that is the one thing that you can take from the gym and use to impact every aspect of your life. How have you taken that confidence boost from working out and used it to better your life?
Exactly what you're saying is so true. And I don't know of a person who has got into some kind of structured health and fitness program that can't say the same thing. It empowers you so much to find an area in your life that you actually can take control of, and you have so much power, more than you know, and you learn that along the way as far as what you can do and what you can stick to, and just the act of going through that process and sticking with it. And everybody has their times and their days where they're not so perfect, and that's totally okay, but picking back up with it and carrying on is the most important part. And as you go along, you learn so much about yourself, and it really just does empower you. It made a huge difference for me in just having the confidence. I have three daughters, and I think that helped show my daughters that, a healthy lifestyle, also being a competitor, to not be afraid to put yourself out there, and go for what you want, no matter whatever anybody else is thinking about you, no matter the comments that you get. If it's something that you believe in and that you're passionate about, to just go for it. And like I said, you can just learn so much about yourself in the process.
Absolutely, and it's so much more of a mental journey than I think than a physical journey that people don't realize because you can convince your body to work out. I mean, just but the mental aspect is so much more trying. But yeah, I mean, we've heard so many great stories of just on the confidence boost alone, and that in and of itself is one thing that I like to try to tell people when they're asking me about, hey, do you really think I should really start really taking things seriously? And that's always use that as an example. But now a fun question that I love to ask because everyone's genetics are different. We were talking about this just a little bit before, and everyone always has that one body part when they get started in the gym that really, really takes off. And then everyone always has that one body part that just lags behind, unfortunately. They just have to train to oblivion. I mean, I'll give you mine first. My back, just because I had jobs in warehouses all throughout college where you either got a really nice back or you quit, but also being 6'3", I mean, my legs and my lower body are just shot where, I mean, I still have friends to this day when I walk into the gym, they go, "Oh, hey, Ryan, you plan on working legs anytime this year?" And then it's like, come on, you saw me working legs yesterday. It's like, come on. So, and then calves, especially, don't even get me started. I always said I could inject pure muscle into my calves and they wouldn't gain an ounce. But what were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
Oh, definitely my best and most responsive body part is definitely my upper body. I always joked that God cut me in half and gave me somebody else's upper body and a different lower body because my legs were definitely very, very hard to respond. They just took a lot more work to do, and I kind of had a love hate relationship with them, hating working them because one, I didn't see, I couldn't, I had to work them so much harder to get any kind of results. But the once I figured that out and I got through I really hate working my legs, then it really made a huge difference. I got my legs and my glutes, especially like my hamstrings and the back of my legs, to a point that I was shocked that I could get them to, and it was just pushing a little harder. You just have to realize that you do have different body parts and they respond. So if you have a area that's not responding, you're just going to have to push it harder, and you can get it there. It just takes some different training or more volume of training or some kind of different strategy for that. So yeah, I'll say my legs and my glutes.
Well, I was gonna say she's talking upper body. Her arms are basically taking up the entire screen. So yeah, that's a given. But yeah, I mean, I always love asking that question because we have such a wide variety of answers. I mean, I remember I had one lady who just I don't know why, but she was just born with those calves, and she put her calf like right up on the table, and I was like, okay, we're done here. I don't want to talk to you anymore. It's just ridiculous. But yeah, I know it's just one of those things where I just find it so fascinating that other people's bodies respond differently, and I think that's important to enforce in this day and age because everyone is on Instagram and everyone looks at these photos of people and they always say, "Oh, I want their arms or I want their abs or I want their legs." But just be the best version of yourself. You don't know, first of all, how that person got to where they're at. You don't know. I mean, maybe they're just more genetically inclined to look like that. So I just think spreading that message is so important, especially for the youngest generation where they always grow up saying, I mean, in your generation, it was probably just looking at magazines and being like, "Oh, I want what they have." But now it's with social media. So every generation, I think, needs to have that a little bit enforced, where it's like just be your own best version. But a training technique that I use all the time that I didn't learn it on here, but I really, had so many people come on and praise it is time under tension. Do you use a lot of time under tension in your training?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, my training, and I still train. I haven't really competed in a few years, but my training has always been more, and I would switch it up, but I've always been more of a lighter weights, um, really focusing on the muscle and the contraction, and slowing it down. Yeah, the time under tension is huge. For me, I know not everybody could, work out that way. I've had many clients and friends who needed to be more on a faster paced power type of workout, and who definitely needed the heavier weights. But I can do amazing changes in my body, and so can other people with lighter weights. It's nicer on the joints for sure as you get older, and just really, really focusing and slowing it down. That to me is my best way of training for sure.
Well, and I always say another big myth and stereotype is, some people don't realize the fact that there's a difference between powerlifting and bodybuilding. a lot of people think that just because you have big muscles that you're automatically like, oh, they're benching like 400 pounds and they're just absolutely jacked. But it's a different type of training when you're going for that aesthetic look as opposed to, because then you have some power lifters where, let's be honest, they don't look like they've ever worked out a day in their life. And then they go into the gym and they're, breaking all these records and you're just like, oh my God, that's incredible. So that's another thing I love to enforce, because I have had people where they're like, wow, these bodybuilders, I didn't think that they'd be that, I thought that they'd be a little bit stronger. And it's like, well, first of all, bodybuilders still can be very, very strong. It's just, it's not that powerlifting type of strength. So yeah, in time under tension, I mean, you're not going to be maxing out on time under tension really, because that's that's not really how that goes. But were you always in the physique division? Or I know since you probably competed before the whole bodybuilding split happened, were you always in the upper divisions, or did you start out in maybe like a smaller division?
Yeah, I actually started out doing figure. I never did bikini just because I felt like I just didn't have that body style. So started out in figure and did that from probably 2009 to I think 2013, right after the women's physique division started. I said, "Oh man, I really want to do that. Like, I can lose the shoes. I like the posing better." And so that was like my thing. I jumped right into that as like, I think the year after it came out, and loved it. And you also get to do your own, posing routine, to music and things like that, where you don't do that in figure. So, yeah, figure and then to physique.
So what did you have to mix up your training or your nutrition a lot when you went from figure to physique? Because for anyone out there who isn't aware, it's a big change in your physique wise. You got to be a lot more muscular, a lot more shredded in the physique division.
Yeah, well, honestly, no, I didn't change it up a whole lot other than going a little bit heavier, and just each year then was really trying to gain more muscle, as well as keep it all defined, and carve out certain areas that I wanted. But I was already, as a figure competitor, I was already, they already were telling me that I was pretty hard looking. And since then, since I first competed in figure, that was 2009 to 2012, it's different now than it was then. So in those years that I was in figure, they were already telling me that I was a little harder, and that the judges were recommending me to check into the physique division that was going to be coming soon. So, I really didn't have to change a whole lot other than really trying to get. I really did start focusing more on like the V taper, like really trying to intensify that, and just starting to gain more muscle. I'm only 5'1", so I feel like I visually look bigger muscular wise than I actually am. I'm pretty small, so it wasn't hard to look bigger with just a little more weight training and things like that. So it's really such a visual aesthetic eye trickery type of thing, when you're doing the physique sports, because you're not, for those classes like figure and physique, you're not going and you're not getting weighed. There's no measurements of anything. It's all what the judge's eye see. So, a shorter person can look more muscular than a taller person.
Believe me, I've experienced that firsthand. Being 6'3", I know all about that. I mean, I was a stick figure when I kind of got started in the gym, and yeah, it took me so much training and so much eating just to really bulk up a little bit. So yeah, I completely understand that. But you brought up probably the most fascinating thing that I would have never guessed before I started this podcast. I mean, I would have never thought in a million years that for so many of these competitors, posing is the hardest thing for a lot of them. I mean, it's harder than your nutrition. It's harder than your working out. I mean, I like to compare it now to being a perfect driver, where you can be a great driver. You can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser. You can never be a perfect poser, because it's always ever evolving. What was your experience with posing like?
Um, I felt like in the beginning I liked it, and then it got to the point where it was just, as your workload progresses and your workouts get longer and it's more demanding as you get higher and up in the ranks, you just have to work more, and your food is then even more important as you progress, and now you're competing against higher level athletes. It's more competition, so you have to have everything on spot. So, with as much attention that you're paying to your diet and nutrition and your training, and you're tired and you're still trying to live your normal life, posing ends up being, I think, for most people, kind of on the back burner. It's just like one more thing that you're kind of like, oh, I know it good enough. You just put it off. And not everyone, but I found myself kind of, as I was progressing, putting off the posing. And so I could tell that it was starting to lag and not be a good point for me. Going back and looking at pictures on stage and things like that, it was kind of like, oh man, I got to step up my game. But it's literally the last thing that you want to do on top of your food prep and your workouts and everything else that you've got to get done. So in my last couple years of competing, I knew that if I was going to stay competitive, I really needed to work on that. I had everything else pretty much where I was comfortable with it, and had everything else was dialed in, and I just made myself do it. I would do it early in the morning when I would go to the gym. 4 a.m. There's not too many people in the in the gym. So after, I think some days I would do it before or after, just kind of depend on how I felt. But I would go in the locker room, great lighting. Nobody's in there. Very small gym in my hometown at that time, and there was no excuses. So you're doing it, and that was. I'm glad that I realized it was something that I needed to work on. I had a coach who I was working with for some things, but not really posing so much. I mean, he would tweak me up here and there, but I didn't see him very often. It was more of just a kind of a strategize on which shows that I wanted to do, and what might be after this show, what might be good to go to as far as a strategy on where I'm at with everything. But so there was really no one pushing me to work on those things. I really just had to suck it up and say, you know what, if you want to win, if you want to be better, you have to do this. And so I just made myself do it. But yeah, that was probably my least favorite until I really started doing it. Then you find, with anything, with practice and doing it, you get better at it. You start appreciating it more. And I honestly think that had I not done that, my last two shows, to the extent that I did, I don't think my muscle definition would have came out as much, and I definitely wouldn't have been as comfortable on stage. And that shows through huge too. So if you don't look comfortable, and it's not natural looking for you, and you're really struggling, that's you just don't look professional. So
I couldn't agree more. And so many people don't realize that after your workouts, a lot of times, I mean, some of these posing sessions that you guys do, you hurt more than you do after your own workout. I mean, it's just the body is not meant to be in that flex of a state for that long. So it takes so much practice just to get it down pat. But out of your physique poses, what is your favorite pose to do, and what is your least favorite pose?
I always in the physique poses, I always like side chest. Um, and my least favorite was probably like the ab shot, just because I feel like my abs are flat. I'm very lean, but they're very flat, so I could never pop them as much as I wanted to. So that was probably my least favorite.
Well, that's always the number one that we get for least. Well, because it's also like an awkward looking pose too. It's the one that you
Yeah.
can't really make it look so like natural and flowy as the other one. So yeah, that's one that we hear of all the time. But when you were getting started, really starting to take things seriously for bodybuilding wise, what would you say? Because you said that your nutrition sort of took a little while to catch up. What would you say was probably the biggest change that you made once you started to take nutrition really, really seriously?
Going super, super low carb. I always it was a transition for me to go into eating carbs, and like the oatmeal and that's fine and dandy, and there's nothing wrong with those, but for me to really get that lean and stay lean, and I also was I just really had to go almost no carbs other than veggies for several months. And that was something different that happened probably in my last few years of competing. And I don't know if maybe it was just me getting older and your body changes, and so what I did, my first couple competitions wasn't working for me, as I got older. So that could be a component too. Or it could just be, just trying to get to that next level of leanness for, a more competitive pro card type of show. You just know you gotta take it the extra mile. So I also was having like issues where I almost was like narcoleptic when and I was already eating very like low carbs. So I had a little oatmeal with one meal, some sweet potatoes, rice, that kind of thing. But after a meal, like half hour after a meal, I would fall asleep like driving or fall asleep at my desk working and so just thought, maybe I did. My coach kind of helped me at that time and said, you know what, I wonder if it's, even though the little bit of carbs that you're eating, I'm wondering if it's kind of like you're just running through those carbs so fast, like it's almost like a insulin crash for you once you've ran through those carbs. So completely cut them out and was eating only my proteins and veggies. And that made a huge difference in that whole narcoleptic thing where I was just falling asleep at weird times. Really stopped. So I felt a lot better on that. And since then, I have pretty much tried to maintain. Obviously, there's always special occasions or certain things that I'll eat carbs for, but since then, my lifestyle now is really, really, really low carb, not necessarily like a keto where it's super high fat, but I found my kind of like sweet spot with my diet, and obviously not really competing anymore, but trying to stay as fit and lean and healthy as possible. That works for me. So
So what was your experience like this last Christmas Eve or Christmas, and I should say New Year's then, with the food? Did you just say, "Hey, you know what? I'm not competing right now. Just I'll just enjoy myself."
yeah, pretty much. I do, even like if I know we're having, a holiday meal or something, or we're going to be going out for dinner, I am just super stickler around all those meals. Like if I want to enjoy dessert or something like that, or a little bit of alcohol or something, I just keep all my other meals around there, just my norm, very low sugar, low carb. I really pay attention to how much sugar is in everything. Because I know that I don't eat much processed foods whatsoever because I'm kind of turning into like a nerd on the whole, a science nerd on the whole, like longevity, anti-aging, fighting off disease type of
Well,
thing.
clearly it's working, everyone. So that I'm just gonna say that out there. Clearly it's working. So she's not really a nerd, I guess.
Yeah, I really am like interested in all these science studies now about, like minimizing your risk for diabetes and cancer and, living longer, but looking great and being very healthy with living longer. So I'm into some other different things right now as far as, so back to your question about the meal, if I know I'm going to eat something and enjoy myself and just kind of let it go, I'll just pick and choose. Like, what do I want? Do I want dessert? Um, and if so, then my other things like my regular meal, I will just try to stick with the meats and veggies. And I just really, I don't go crazy. I just kind of let myself go with what I'm craving at that time. But all the other meals up to that are going to be my normal. I don't just throw the whole day, you know, to the wayside. I don't think it's going to hurt me in any huge aspect, but I know I won't feel as good and I don't want to feel, super bloated and I don't want to regret what I just ate. So I just try to keep it under control.
And that's honestly, I couldn't think of a better way to do it myself. But you were talking about narcolepsy, and one of the questions that I think is probably one of my favorites to ask, because it's not talked about at all on Instagram, is the importance of sleep when it comes to recovery. I mean, it is the most important thing. It might be one of the most important things overall, just with the bodybuilding lifestyle. I mean, just average person needs to get the proper amount of sleep, but bodybuilding and anyone that's in the healthy and fit lifestyle, they know that it's vastly more important because it helps with your recovery. It really can just change your entire day. Dealing that you had the narcolepsy though, how do you now try to get that proper amount of sleep? Because sometimes even if you're not competing, I mean, just with all that working out and getting up at 4 a.m., which I mean, I used to work night shifts, so I'd be going to bed at 4. So people getting up that early just boggles my mind. But how did you deal with that? And how do you continue to deal with that, trying to get that proper amount of sleep?
Well, I will tell you, I will be completely honest. When I was competing, I did not sleep enough. Trying to work a full-time job. Um, my three kids, I was a single mom. Um, and trying to fit my workouts in, getting up at 4 a.m. to go do an hour of cardio in the morning. And I wouldn't be getting in bed until like 11 o'clock at night by the time I got home from my nighttime workout after work, get my food. I mean, it's just in constant prepping for everything. And so I was maybe getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep a lot of the time, a little bit longer on the weekends, obviously trying to catch up on it. But I'll be honest, my sleep was horrible during my competing. I don't know how I did that much on so little sleep. It's doable, but you feel you're miserable, and I'm sure that I made people around me miserable at times. So yeah, and I knew at the time that I needed more sleep, and that probably had a lot to do with my narcolepsy. I would try to catch naps when I could, like if I was getting off work and then I had to go right into my tanning and my workout. I would sleep in my car for 20 minutes and take a power nap or something before I, like after work, but before I went in to get my evening workout in. So there was times where, I would just try to catch a 15, 20-minute nap somewhere in the day to try to get me through. But I'm sure that the narcolepsy problem was part in because I wasn't getting enough sleep. Um, but now getting older and then reading, everything that I have been, I'm just really into reading all these studies and stuff about health and longevity. Um, I realize now how much more important it is, and I wish I would have known it then or just did more to get more sleep. I don't know how that, I'm sure it would have helped me in some way. It wouldn't have been quite as miserable for me being so tired. But yeah, I definitely prioritize sleep a lot more. I'm not so, I want to get my workouts in, but I'm not one now to be like, I have to be up and get, you know, a workout in or my cardio in before I go to work. I do prioritize sleep now. I'm getting older, and I know that, sleep is huge for cleaning out your brain and cleaning out toxins and helping reduce, like Alzheimer's and dementia in later years. So, plus just getting older, your body doesn't recover from the workouts that you do as good. So, the rest and the sleep are definitely more of a priority than they ever have been in my life.
Okay, so you've mentioned getting older, and I was going to wait until about closer to the end part of the podcast to ask you your age because I didn't want to embarrass anyone to come off the. So how old are you, Justine?
I just turned 46 in December. So,
Can you give us a front double bicep so I can show everyone how embarrassing it is that we have a 46-year-old that's okay, that's not even fair, everyone. That's just absolutely ridiculous. 46 years old, and I got to definitely hit the weights now after I'm done talking to her. That's just ridiculous. But and yeah, and that's so awesome. But I got to ask, knowing that I mean, you had kids when you were 20, that must have meant that you were competing when they were teenagers. Having teenage girls, as I can imagine, because I have two brothers, I don't have any sisters, but can be hard enough as it is. What was that like being on prep while also being the mom of teenage girls?
yeah, that's why I said I'm sure I made some other people around me miserable. Yeah, it's I mean, as teenagers, they're getting to the point where they don't want to hang out with mom anyway. They're kind of doing their own thing. So, but I think there was a time when they were a little younger. I think when I first got into it, they were like in middle school, and it was kind of strange to have their mom, see up on a stage in a suit like that. So it was, I think, hard for them at first to kind of be okay with, oh, that's something different. We've never seen mom like that. But I think their kids are so smart, and over a little bit of time, as they see, you reaching goals, and you're winning and you're bringing home some trophies, and I think they began to start seeing it as, this is a sport, and it's mom's happier, mom's healthier. um I could be a better mom at most levels, other than if I'm super super tired or cranky or something. But I know that my kids saw it as, even if that's something that they didn't get into eventually as far as physique competing, it was always something like, okay, you a good example for my daughters to see. I can go out and I have a goal and I can reach it and I can push myself farther than what I think I could do. And I think it was just a good example of perseverance and going after your goals and your dreams. So there were definitely trying times with, with teenagers and trying to deal with emotional times with things going on in everybody's life and trying to stay consistent with that. But I'm sure I could have done some things differently and better. But uh, over the big picture, my I'm super proud of my kids and who they are and where they're at now in life. And if I could uh, attribute some of that to me being an example of having goals and going for them, then that makes me very proud. So.
Absolutely, and I always say, just if you can get through a bodybuilding prep, you can get through just about anything. So that's one thing that we hear of all the time on here. But two of the questions that I love to ask all the health and fitness guests that come on the podcast. For the first one, I mean, there were so many positive things that happened to me when I started working out and getting bigger and stronger. But the one negative thing is you're going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open a lot of pickle jars or bottled water or anything
Right,
that's sealed
right.
on tight. You're the go-to strength person. I mean, still being at home with my parents for the next 2 months before I move out, every single time they come in with groceries, I basically have to lift the car into the driveway and then carrying the groceries myself. Have you found that that's been a similar experience with you, where people just take one look at you and they just assume that you can do favors for them?
Oh yeah, yeah. The girls at work joke quite a bit about me carrying boxes around, with the delivery boxes or something, or opening, like you said, opening a pickle jar or something. Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I don't think I've never been offended by it or anything like that. But yeah, definitely, people will make some comments. Even people that you don't know, will make some comments, just out in public or something. So.
Yeah, well, then that leads me, because I was going to ask that too. So, what is that like? Because I always say, if you're any muscular person, but especially a woman, I mean, that's not society's norm. So you always become sort of like a mini celebrity when you walk out. Like if you're dressed the way that you're dressed right now and you walked out in the street, I mean, people would look. I mean, it's just human nature. So, what was that like an adjustment period for you? Just sort of getting used to the fact that, oh, I'm going to get stares if I go out in public.
Yeah, I mean, it happens so slowly as far as, your progression. It definitely doesn't happen overnight. So it's a slow progression and you can adapt to it and get used to it. And yeah, I don't consider myself a very showy type of person. I have done photo shoots and some other interviews and things like that, but I mean, unless I'm going to the gym, and honestly, I don't wear anything revealing or whatever, sometimes even a long sleeve shirt or a hoodie, So I'm just kind of going there to do my thing. But yeah, you'll get you know, comments or looks. I guess the majority of the public people don't say anything. I think when you get a comment, it's more when you're in the gym working out than anything else. Yeah, so there's a few comments here and there, but it I don't know if it's not really embarrassing, I guess, but you just don't want to like drum up a conversation about it. You try not to keep a conversation going. So.
Well, I just remember, just even in college, like I couldn't go sleeveless to a bar without getting asked to like arm wrestle or anything like that. So that's just something that I had to deal with. But yeah, with the furniture moving and stuff like that too. I mean, the only thing that bothers me is this, because I'm a guy and I'm 6'3". I could have zero muscle at all and they'd still ask me to move. So just having muscles just adds on even more to it, where it's every other weekend during the summer just asking people to help. But I do it because I'm a good friend. But now my favorite question to ask, because men have their own clothing troubles when it comes to being in shape and finding out some clothing options that work. But for women, I mean, if you have big, broad shoulders, dresses aren't your best friend. Jeans are another thing that we hear of all the time, where if you have a big lower body and a small waist, jeans are not made for that. What have been some ways that you have found that you're able to compensate for the fact that your clothing options can be very limited at times?
A lot of gym clothes, a lot of comfortable gym clothes, yoga pants, some sweatpants, like those spandex stretchier jeans type of thing. And I don't order a whole lot online, just for that fact. I feel like it's a little easier now because I'm not competing, so I'm definitely broader shouldered and bigger legs than the average person with the smaller waist, like you're saying. But it's not, my back and my shoulders are not as broad as they were before. So it's a little easier now to find stuff that fits a little bit better. Um, than it was before. But yeah, that's always a little bit of a struggle. And being short on top of it, it's already, you're 5'1" and you're wider and stockier. So you've got to really find bigger sizes and then try to accommodate, the waist and stuff.
Well, yeah, I have a really good friend who's 5'1", and she's really, really skinny. So she has enough problems in and of itself. So I can't imagine what that would be like to be a really muscular 5 foot. I mean, like I always said, if there's anyone out there with clothing for, all my guests that I have on, I mean, they're willing to spend money to have it on. You'd be like a millionaire just if you went to all the guests that I had on. So anyone out there, just definitely get on it. But now, if you could change one thing about the health and fitness lifestyle, what would it be?
About just in general, the health and fitness
Yeah, or you
lifestyle.
can do bodybuilding if you want to. Either way.
Um, oh gosh, that's a good question. I feel like since I'm so into right now the aspect of, I honestly feel like that everyone really needs to know how powerful and self healing their own bodies are, and that you can do so much with what you have naturally, that you don't have to go to like prescriptions or I do use a lot of supplements, but they're like natural and they're like human biology enhancing type of things. So um, I just feel like right now my focus is on this exploration of how our bodies are so powerful and we can just like we're made to heal ourselves and everybody works differently. So the sometimes the cookie cutter, here's your training, especially if you're going to compete, there's so much out there that says, here's what you've got to do to become a competitor. And I don't think a lot of trainers take it into account, the differences between one person and another. So I'm super huge right now into like really finding out what each person's body needs and responds to. And that takes a little trial and error, but there are some tools out there now that you can utilize to find out your genetic capabilities and your genetic gifts and things like that and take advantage of them. Um, and so I feel like that's kind of where I think I see it starting to kind of go that way, like performance enhancement and finding out like kind of on a DNA level your specific body needs and how to take what your body is and how to flip all your personal switches to make not only like getting ready for a competition easier, and you can drop a lot of trial and error by knowing your body and your body type and what works for you. But outside of competing, just for health and longevity and anti-aging, there's so much you can find out about your own personal individual body with these tools that we have now, and some good coaching and strategizing that you can really kind of, I don't know if I like using the word hack, but you can really tap into your own body's power and just stay young, stay healthy, stay amazing looking, and disease free. So
Yeah. Well, and I also have a friend who was talking about. I mean, he has ADD, and they do this thing now apparently where they can just take like a swab of your spit or something, and then they can determine what medicine would work best for you because then they look at your DNA. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. So it's somewhat similar to that, but yeah, just with the advancements, yeah, it's so impressive what they're able to accomplish now. But we are a few days removed from New Year's, so I can imagine the gym is not the best place. The month of January, I'm lucky where I have enough workout equipment at home where I only go to a gym like once a week, and the other 4 or 5 days that I might work out, I just do it at home. But what advice do you have for people going in there with New Year's resolutions? Because I get really sad when I think about that. Because if you really think about it, there's probably like only 10 to 15% of them actually follow through on their resolutions and actually see it achieved. Because there's always that joke where in February that's the low point of the gym where like no one ever is there because everyone gives up. But what advice do you have for people getting started just so that they're able to maintain that? And because a lot of times I think people just tend to overdo it where they train so hard that they only last a few weeks.
yeah, that's a huge issue. And that for people who are quitting, it's one, I think for two reasons. One, they're not seeing results, even if they hang out for, a couple months rather than just quitting in February, they're not seeing results. And two, they're pushing too hard. And it's just like, I can't keep this up. So I feel like the best advice for that is they're, they're not knowing what to do. They're going in there and there's so much information that we get from social media and commercials, and we're just bombarded constantly with these quick fixes and this diet and that diet. Well, like I was mentioning before, you have to figure out how your body is going to work and respond. And a lot of people go in and they look at they find a workout program online or in a magazine or what the trainer has posted on the board at the gym. And movement is great, but if you can't figure out and tap into what your body specifically is going to respond to, and you aren't going to do your own trial and error, like if you're not seeing results and you're not going to switch it up and say, okay, this didn't get me where I thought it should, let me try something completely different. If you're not going to go through that self trial and error and you're just going to give up, then I think that person who is serious about trying to get healthier, trying to lose some body fat, reduce disease risk, needs to get with not necessarily a personal trainer, but more of like a health coach or a health strategist that's going to take their entire lifestyle, their genetic predispositions, and put a specific plan together, not just a specific workout plan, but put all those puzzle pieces together with them for diet, their workout program, exercise program, whatever that may be, their sleeping, their any type of supplements. It's a huge puzzle that you have to put together in order to really get optimal results and be motivated to keep going with it. So I would honestly suggest finding a health strategist or a health coach or some kind of more than just a personal trainer, somebody that's going to help you put all the pieces together, not just give you a workout program and say, if you can't do this, if it doesn't work for you, then it's, that's on you type of thing. And so into that, I have this coming up. I've been a health coach for a little while. I do help people put those puzzle pieces together, and I've got a new site that's coming out. It's being built right now. But that is something that I'm so passionate about and, can help with for people who want to compete in whatever sport for performance, abilities, and increase their performance capabilities, for people who just want to lose some body fat, get healthy, people who want to get off prescription medicines. It's going to be a individualized program for any type of person from beginner to advanced athlete, to really tap into what their body's made of and what is going to work for them to either get started and get some results or to get to that next level.
Yeah. Well, and that's all, and definitely let us know when that comes up. Believe me, I'm working on a site right now for this podcast, and I know how much of a pain that can be at times to get it going. But is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
Yeah, actually a couple people. So my kids, my three daughters, I am so very proud of them, and I always appreciate them putting up with their mom in those competing years, and allowing me to have my dream and respect that. And then also my boyfriend, Steve. He is so supportive and he amazes me. He's not into like bodybuilding or anything like that, but he is a competitive Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and he is competing at world levels. And so he's amazing. So even though our sports are a little bit different, we definitely have the respect for each other's sport and the desire to reach those goals and progress and get further and get better. And so he's very supportive of me and everything that I do. And I definitely support him in his journey in the jujitsu. And it's a fantastic sport. I tried it. I don't know that I would ever be able to do it. I don't know if that's necessarily my thing, but man, do I have a lot of respect going to watch him with practice and his coach Miguel Torres and teaching, the classes and everything. It is a completely different world, and there's a lot of awesome athletes in that division as well. And then, yeah, if I could just mention the coaching by
Absolutely.
Zen.
Yep.
And if once I get it up and running, I would love to come back on and talk more about it. I do have a code that people can go to right now. If you go to the coachingbyzen.com website, if you use the code 2020 now, there'll be some discounts on coaching packages, and there's all kinds of different packages for different needs for different people. So there'll be some New Year coaching discounts on coachingbyzen.com. And if you use the code 2020 now, that can get you some coaching discounts if you'd like.
I'm just writing that down on the sheet of paper that I have, and I will have that appear on the screen as you were talking about it. So yeah, I mean, I love to help out all the guests that I had on, and yeah, honestly, I wish you nothing but the best, and I would love to have you on when you have that website on and talk about that again. I'm more than happy, and everyone, go and give Justine a follow. I mean, just looking at some of her photos, you're going to be inspired to get off the couch and stop eating those Twinkies and maybe get in shape. But again, Justine, thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ryan. I really am honored that you asked me to be on your podcast, and I wish great things for you as well as you continue in your journey. I would love to come on again if you would, see a need for me to come on and speak again. That'd be awesome.
Absolutely. I would be more than happy to. And I couldn't think of a better way than to wrap that up. Well, and again, everyone, go and give her a follow. I'll leave a link to all that stuff down below. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye, Ryan. Bye, guys.